I don't think that's theological, to be honest. It's just...
I think it's theological.
Whoa!
See, another controversy.
I think it all displays God for sure.
Yeah, everything displays God.
So it is theological.
Stop it!
I don't think I want to get into that conversation with you.
Everything in creation displays God, therefore everything is theological.
Wasn't it Albert Einstein that said you can live two ways, as if everything is a miracle or if nothing is a miracle?
Yeah, boy.
Bro, everything's a miracle.
Everything's Let's go. All right, so I hope you haven't heard any of this conversation because it's a totally different topic, but we're having fun. We are trying to talk about planning. This is probably going to take a few
And before you switch off,
yeah,
this to me is the second most important thing.
the second most. First prayer,
First prayer,
then plan. And
you have to plan.
If you've been following diligently, because there's a lot of content on this platform on Patreon, but if you're lucky, you just watched the video we did about pace. Pace yourself before you start planning.
Yes.
In our planning, we're going to talk about strategic planning and the importance of planning.
Yep.
And how you actually measure what's happening. So this episode.
So prayer is primary because it sets your pace.
Yes.
But you have to, when you pray, God's going to tell you things because you're in a position of servanthood. God's called you to be a servant of his people.
Yeah.
Whatever office that is. Pastor, apostle, teacher, preacher, evangelist.
Yeah.
What did I miss?
The apostle, prophet, the evangelist, the teacher, and the pastors.
Yeah, sorry. Those 5.
Yeah.
God's called you into an office of those.
Yes.
To equip the saints, to serve the saints for the work of ministry. So what's the ministry? The work of service to God.
Yes.
In whatever sphere of life they're in. Their family, in their workplace, university, wherever.
Yeah.
So in the office of a servant for the Lord, for the people, prayer, you come into God's environment and he tells you what to do. And you have to plan what to do. If you don't plan, you're not going to do it. And therefore, how have you been faithful with what he's asked you? How do you know what he's asked you if you haven't put it down to and planned it in accordance to his direction? And there are swings with this because then people like, I prayed and he said this, and then a year later I prayed and he said this, and a year later I prayed and he said this. And so there is this view that you can just swing like, oh, I'm going over here now. Yeah, we're in the river now. Yeah, we're on the mountain now. Whereas I'm a lot more slower, more long viewed than that.
Like an overall plan.
You need a plan. What did God say?
Yeah.
That he's not going to change every year.
Yeah. Let me just fix this thing because we might have a problem there. You might have a cable thing going on because you're hitting it. Do you want to backtrack and talk a little bit about what we were mentioning on the last session? Leaders and pastors. Pastors don't like planning. They pray, but they don't like generally. And leaders, the opposite. They're not really big on prayer, but they like planning because planning is sort of outworking what they believe God has given them in their hearts.
So then it's like, what are you leading? If you're leading an organization, you come from the perspective of milestones and KPIs and strategy and influence and spheres and, reach, whatever. But if you're planning from a leading people, it's different. You need to plan. You're a leader. If you're a pastor, you're a leader. If you're a teacher, you're a leader. So you do need to give some time to planning. What you plan is where you go. So a teacher will plan their teaching micro to the core detail. Is this word right? Is this sentence right? But they need to take that to a bigger scale in the sense of what God's asked for you to steward as leading people. Because if you're a teacher, you're still going to lead people. So you need to plan it. So for us, we're a local faith community. I've been in church ministry, serving the church for 25 years at this point, and I've always embraced the need to plan. Otherwise, my capacity is going to be limited because I'm not growing in accordance to. If I don't change, then it's just going to be the same. And I want to change so that things grow. If it's not changing, it's not growing. So, at Chapel, the 4 things we do. I'm just using our context.
Yeah.
We break each of those core focuses down. And let's just start with the gathering. I was talking to someone this morning.
Family time.
Family time. Church, whatever you call it, gathering.
Yeah.
Whatever day of the week, whatever night of the week, whatever. You're going to get people coming together. You have to plan that in detail. So I was talking to a guy this morning. I'm saying, okay, you start with a church in your house. You gather on a Sunday morning because that's sort of a good thing. It's not necessarily
social convenience.
Yeah. So you meet on a Sunday morning. What are you doing on Saturday night? You're cleaning your house. Your toilet will become a public toilet. So you need to clean the toilet. How much toilet paper do you have? Wallpaper do you have?
Yeah. You don't want the toilet paper to be your wallpaper, that's for sure.
How much toilet paper do you have? What are you going to have for us? Well, I think fellowship is important. Breaking bread is important. So what are you going to provide them to connect over? Food, coffee, tea, chocolate, milk. Oh man, we've got 10 people coming. We need more than 2 liters milk for the coffee. So, it's these sort of things. So you start planning. Now we've got 52 Sundays a year. So we need 52 2 liters of milk throughout the year. How much does that cost?
Yeah.
If you're not putting a cost there, then you're not calling on the demand of the church to meet the requirement to serve the people. That's just milk for coffee. What are you going to have for morning tea? You're going to do home baking? That's fine. Who's paying for the home baking? Like the flour, the eggs, whatever, icing, sugar. And then you've got, so that's cups.
And I think you also have to plan with the capacity in mind, because as you start.
No, I agree.
Yes, 20 people, you can do the baking at home.
Yes,
and
of course.
You can get in the kitchen, you can do a couple of pies, coffee.
Absolutely.
You can't do that for 200 people, not at home.
No,
you gotta plan.
But it's the same principle.
Same principle, yeah.
You can do it for 200 people if you plan for it.
If you plan.
But if you don't plan...
Yeah, what I meant is it would be hard for you to bake 20 pies on a Saturday night for 200 people, So on yourself.
Yes.
So you probably talk more people involved.
Absolutely.
Greater scale, that kind of stuff.
But unless you're diligent with 10 in your house, you won't ever do 200 in a hall. Yeah. So that's hospitality. Hospitality is not just the food; it's actually how people enter. Do you need to sweep the yard? Do you need to make it tidy? Have you got enough seats for everyone? Yeah. Don't assume that people will sit on the floor.
They won't. I'm just telling you, he's too kind. They won't.
Yeah.
You need chairs.
You need chairs.
We live in the Western world. It's the first world. Everybody's rich. Everybody's got a couch in their house. So they will want chairs.
Yeah. So cups. Oh, we've got a family of 6. So we have 6 coffee cups, 20 coffee cups. Is that enough? All these things you actually need to plan in detail, and you actually become aware of what's required. Okay, you turn up and you have 10 kids, all different ages.
Where do they go?
In a lounge room, if you're sharing the word to 10 people, where are they going to be? Yeah. Oh, they'll just be outside. Oh, okay, when you've got the ants over here that can eat you in Australia, that ants eat you over here.
And they will come back crying. Yeah. And you don't know what happened, and they're all red.
They will come, where's my kid? Oh, the ants ate it. Yeah. You got a pool. Well, you can't have, there's all these. So you think, oh, but you need to plan.
You don't want to wait until a tragedy happens to figure out that you needed to plan.
So how much is...
That's why you plan, to avoid the tragedy.
Okay, music. You need a plan to have music.
Yeah.
For us, like singing's sort of part of our family. So someone can play guitar. Yeah, are they any good? Well, they're okay. Well, then how it is not how it's going to be.
Yeah.
So
and it's your opportunity to help them grow.
That's fine. But if they say they can play and they can't play, then you have to have that conversation as well. So you need to plan for an alternative. For us, we had a speaker with some music, Spotify, but is the speaker good enough? Mm-hmm. Because if people can hear themselves too much singing, they won't sing.
Yeah.
So it needs to be loud enough that you're confident that no one's going to hear you.
And there's a balance.
But not too loud where they're like, oh my gosh, this is so loud.
There's a balance, because when it gets to a point where the church is meeting in a hall or something, and then there's 200 people, pastors will generally go, oh, it's so good when the church can hear themselves. But then it's 200 people. You are in the group and you don't feel like you've been highlighted.
Yeah.
So
it's vulnerable.
There. Yeah.
And both are good. I don't care. I'm happy with both. I'll just sing out loud anyway.
Yeah.
But and
that's normal for normal people.
And that's the example you set.
Yeah.
I'd rather sing to the Lord off key than worry about what people think. So you're giving an example to the flock in that small context. In the bigger context, obviously, it's different. But so you plan that. How much is that going to cost for a new speaker? Oh, I've got the money. And then it's what else? You got kids, so you need a curriculum for the kids. Communion. Okay, for us, our vision is Jesus. So every chance we get together, we need to have communion. So how much is that going to cost? Well, we need 1,000, 1,200 cups
and cracks every
Sunday. The costs start adding up.
Yeah.
And we don't do the all-in-one thing.
Yeah.
We still do the unhygienic cup and cracker.
You want the good bacteria, bro.
When you're in your house, you need to buy the cups and the juice and the cracker. Who's going to do that? Where are they going to store that? Have you got the trays for it? You need to order it. This might seem more minuscule, but this is what planning is. Because how much is that going to cost you? Yeah. Unless you put a demand on what it's going to cost, then you don't know how much it's going to cost.
And you will run into it. Any discipleship process that you start with anyone, as soon as there is a gathering, people are going to go like, okay, when do we sing? When do we sit down to listen to the word? And when do we have communion? And all of these, you call it rituals or sacraments or whatever you want to call it, they will come to the surface. Yeah. Whatever you decide to do with your church, if it's more traditional and it's bread and it's not a cracker, or you decide to do once a month or every Sunday or once every 6 months, it will come up.
It will come up.
So you have to plan.
So you plan when you're going to do that.
Yeah.
Okay, who's going to sing? Who's going to preach? Who's going to welcome everyone? Who's going to do communion? Are you going to have testimony? Who's going to do testimony?
And reverse engineer everything.
Yeah, you have to. So, okay, you want someone to testify? How long are they going to share for? Because you have to put parameter. That requires planning. So, hey, Pedro, you're going to testify on Sunday. You've got 10 minutes. Oh, 10 minutes. I need way more than 10 minutes. No. You got 10 minutes. Oh, but my testimony is massive. Yeah, it doesn't matter. We're just going to give everyone 10 minutes. Make it in 10 minutes or I'll embarrass you.
Yeah.
So
we'll stop you right there.
So there is, you have to plan that. And I want to give you plenty of notice. Hey, in 2 weeks' time, you're going to be, so you have to have a plan of who's communicating.
Yeah.
You have a new believer turn up. They don't have a Bible. Have you got a Bible? Well, you need Bibles for the year. How are you going to get those? Where do you get? Oh, just buy a $50 Bible. Who's paying for that?
Mm-hmm.
Who's paying for that? So, and this is where personal and your personal money and the church money, it starts to become grey.
Yeah.
So you need to put boundaries in place. When we planted, I kept a track on all the personal, above my giving, above what I wanted to sow in. Yeah. Of what I needed to be reimbursed for, that actually the church should pay for.
And every leader is guilty of that.
Yeah.
Every leader is guilty of that. It's a good guilt because you want to invest, you want to sow.
Yeah.
You have to be careful, otherwise you go bankrupt before the church actually.
You'll sell your house and
Yeah.
sink all your house, and then don't cry out to God for, I need provision. Hang on a sec. All the provision I gave you, you just gave it away.
Yeah.
So I think wisdom's important. Wisdom's the most important thing, therefore get wisdom. So planning. So literally, we have our financial year, like every charity has. Everyone has to have it. You personally as well. So we have a financial year that's from July 1 through to June 30. We've had that same year for 10 years. So March, April, I spend hours in prayer and planning what we're doing. We're going to gather. Family time. Okay, we're still doing kids ministry. But now we have 80 kids on a Sunday. That's different. When we started, we had 20.
Yeah.
If you don't do it well when you're 20, you won't get to 80.
And we are at a stage now that the plan trickles down. You have one massive plan.
Sure.
And then each area has also a massive plan, but it's relatively smaller than that.
Well, it's still the same.
They work both ways.
It's still the same.
The principles are the same.
You still have family time, our gatherings. We have hospitality. How much does it cost every month to feed our community morning tea 8 to 10 times a month?
Yeah, on my planning, this is how you instructed me to do it. I just copied what we did at Chapel when we planted the first church. What's done, who's responsible for it, and how frequent it happens. 3 columns.
Yeah.
And that's we call it our strategic plan.
Yeah.
So we just write everything down. My one started really small, half a page.
Half a page.
Half a page.
You're only gonna it's all you.
Yeah.
You have to gather family time. You have to shepherd them. That's during the week.
Yeah.
And you have to feed them. That's Bible study.
2 hours on a Monday to call everyone.
Yeah.
In the beginning.
Yeah, and you set up to have coffee with 3 or 4 people that week.
And that's it.
And then you do a Bible study. Mm-hmm. Discipleship class. That's it.
Yeah.
1 page. And it's, whatever, 50, 60,000 for the year. But you need to know how much it's going to cost you. And so the second year comes around. I'm not going to presume, I got 60,000. I'm going to get 100,000 now.
Yeah.
No, I steward what we got. So 60,000 last year becomes my baseline budget for this year. I take off 10% and I say 6,000 off. So 54,000 is our budget that we're going to, and all of a sudden, now we should get 60,000 again.
Maybe a little bit more.
Maybe more, but let's not
we
be
plan for less.
We say 10% less, so then we've got margin.
Yeah.
We can breathe.
Because the blessing is in the margin.
It's your pace.
Yeah.
We're not going to exhaust our resource for the sake of growth. Growth will happen. Growth is an outcome.
And if you exhaust every resource you have, you will never be ready for an opportunity.
Well, your pace is wrong for the start. You'll cook everyone. So you just sow where you're fruitful. Well, I think I've mentioned that before. So you plan and you see last year's plan. This is what we planned to do. We planned to do communion, every week, and it cost us this much. Man, we've now cost us this much because this many people. We're going to have kids, a curriculum. We're going to purchase a curriculum. Well, that's going to cost us this much so that we can really start teaching our kids. And here's the leader for that. So often in my plan is to do with people. How's the team? Is there someone that wants to be, released into that aspect of ministry and they want to serve the Lord? That could be a great expression and release for them to do that.
Do you think that the financial planning, the way you were explaining, we plan for 10% less, and if we grow 10%, that's amazing. But you just plan for 10% less every year. Do you think that same principle applies for all of the other metrics that we use for church?
No, I don't. People, all other metrics are outcomes, so you don't focus on outcomes. So all metrics are outcomes.
Okay.
Attendance, baptisms, discipleship class, decisions on the day for the Lord.
So you don't
giving.
plan that with 10% less or anything?
No. You just, that's an outcome. It doesn't matter. You can't change that. So you take what...
Focus on input.
You focus on your input. So that's pressure. And you pray and you're hearing the Lord, okay, God, family time. And he's like, music, it'd be great to have, keep worshiping. There's a sound at chapel that is unique. That's in our heart.
Mm-hmm.
And so you got to plan for that. Now, we're not planning to import musicians and all that. We're planning to sow into that ministry, and it'll be what it is.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter the outcome, but you've got to know the cost. So you always pray and then plan first before you worry about the finances. So you write down what's in the heart of the Lord for this community. How can you make that happen? And then how much is that going to cost? And if it comes back at $75,000 and you've only got 50, then you're like, okay, we need to reduce our expectation.
That was my question. And I think this is more of a personal question. How do you have ever dealt? I don't think you have to deal with this anymore, although we would love to have $10 million coming in. But how have you ever dealt with that gap? Like, we would love to have this. This is what I feel. This is my prayer time. This is what God's revealing. At least I think that's what it is. But that's going to cost 150. We only have 80. Do you bring the plan down to the finances, or how does it work for you?
We bring it down to the level of stewardship we have, to what we can steward. We can't steward 150,000
because he hasn't given it to you.
Because we've never had 150,000. You can only steward what you've already had. So we've had 60 before. So why steward 80? We'll steward 80 when we get to 80. We've never had 80. What makes us presume? Faith. No, faith is substance.
You need to be able to touch it.
Faith is not hope. We hope we're going to get 80. That's not faith.
Yeah.
Faith is the substance.
Hope is unseen.
Yeah,
faith
is substance. It's displayed in works. So, I've got faith that God's going to give us 80. No, you're presuming and hoping God gives you 80.
And you might be planning, driving people.
Sure. And you'll get it if you manufacture it, or faith is sometimes in the waiting. There's as much faith in waiting as going. So.
Oh, wow. That's another big one. There is as much faith in waiting
than going.
Then ongoing. Wow.
Then going after it.
Yeah.
There's as much faith in waiting for God to trust it to you as there is in the faith in trusting God to get it for you.
I don't think anyone is ready to wait for.
Honestly. No one's ready to wait.
Yeah.
People say, when are you going to get a building?
You have a different reality in your mind.
When are you going to get a building? Well, when God provides one for us. Obviously, we're not ready yet. Oh, but you are ready. You got a big community. Big, it's relative perspective. Yeah, but it doesn't matter. We just steward. Well, if you spent all the money that you spent to hire the hall, you could have your own place.
Yeah, we could.
Yeah, but we don't.
Yeah, it hasn't shown up on our doorstep yet.
Yeah, and we don't have the capacity in our finances to do it.
Because if we had, we would be making offers.
Exactly.
Okay, let's go. Because then God had trusted us with that, and then we would.
See, you could see it on two sides of the equation. We could say we have faith that God will give us, if it's $1 million, to buy a building. So we will wait until we've got $1 million, and then we can buy a building. Or you can have $100,000 and buy a building for $1 million and assume, and hope that God will give you the capacity to be debt free in 10 years.
And then the pandemic hits, and then you're out, and then you go back to God. Why God? And then God answers with the same questions. Why
look, I don't think the other way is wrong. I just see it different. I don't think the other way is, you see great buildings.
I just think you got to be really ready. And you need a lot of time in your time capsule. Like, I've done this for 30 years, and I've bought 8 buildings before with a deposit of 10%. And this is generally what happens with the excitement, because we've known church planners and church builders that have done that. They've built 50 churches. Not our drive, not our lane, but they've done it. So if you've done it before and you've got the experience, you have enough security, that's another thing, because you don't want the bad testimony in the community.
Yep.
Oh, they bought this building, they couldn't pay for it. That's a shame,
Yeah. And expectation. Why would I expect the people to pay for a building they don't care about?
Ooh. I remember you told me that when we rented our first wrong place.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, we ain't got money for rent. And then you said, no, you don't have money for rent because God never told you to rent it. You did. So you pay. And I'm like, not helping, bro. But that was true. And it took us like 6 months to realize it was a bit of a mess. And then we moved, and hopefully, thankfully God was merciful on that way. And then we learned from our mistakes, but it happened.
Because then if you go the other way, if you hope God honors your step of faith to get into debt to buy a building.
Yeah, that's not a step of faith.
Some say it is.
Yeah.
We're trusting God to provide for us for the future.
Yeah.
But your focus now, your planning has shifted because you have to have $100,000 for the building.
So now you're not planning for stewardship. You're planning for provision.
Yeah. So you've already got a chunk out of your budget that's just to service debt.
Yeah.
And I'm just refusing to have debt.
It's the same principle for personal finances.
Yeah.
You use your credit card all that much, and then you got 10 grand of debt every month.
Yeah.
Man, you're not free.
Yeah. So we just see it different. We don't need money. We're not after money. God provides for his people, and we have everything we need, and no one is in lack. And so we plan for people to serve the people, because that's money's seed that you input, and it input into people and input into provision for the people.
Yeah.
And do you need a facility? Well, no. Is it easier? Maybe. Maybe not.
Yeah.
We're nimble. We're flexible. People will turn up anywhere for family. So we're not precious about buildings. Will we own a building? Sure.
It all depends on the expression you try to create. And if you, again, it goes back to what you always say. If you're trying to manufacture it and you want the big, nice theater with the black walls and the lights and the smoke machines, how you get them?
Does a building demonstrate the blessing of the Lord? I don't know.
Look at Greece. Look at Greece. They had beautiful buildings. They're all ruins.
Is the car I drive demonstration of the blessing of God? I don't know.
And if it is, I'm done.
Is it a blessing or a curse? I don't know. So
isn't that Bible verse? A blessing that comes too early could be a curse.
Yeah. So we don't own a facility, and people say, well, you're not wise. And I'm like, well, our people are free because there's no obligation.
Yeah.
Oh, they have to pay rent. Yeah, but we'll meet in the park. We've done that before. We'll meet on the beach. We've done that before. And
if that's their definition of wisdom, and I have to choose between that kind of wisdom and the freedom we have, I would choose freedom every day of the week.
Look, if God wanted us to have a building, I have the faith that he will drop it to us and drop land to us or whatever. He's that good. He doesn't need me to coax the sheep to sell their wool.
Yeah.
For me to provide a shelter for them when they can never use it anyway.
Yeah.
I'd rather let the sheep and teach the sheep to steward their finances so they can have shelter and legacy for their own family.
Yeah.
So that's just our way. I'm not saying it's right and the others are wrong. It's just different. It happens with the pace, but you have to plan for this. Yeah. So we've got to plan for rent.
We didn't touch on it's something that we don't do, and you've mentioned it before in a few other episodes, that we don't need people in the car park, because if people know where you live, and that is an assumption that most of our people, they come on a frequent basis, and the visitors are a small percentage, and the visitors come with someone, So very rarely someone walks out of the blue with no one being connected. It happens, but not very often. So we don't do the traditional car parking thing with volunteers in the car parking.
We don't have ushers. We don't have car park attendants. When you know where it is, you know where to go.
But what I meant by that is we meet in a facility that there is parking there.
Yes.
It's a fairly big, but that's relative, but subjective. But we meet in a facility where people drive to, and we've got that park. And if you start in the church and 20 people rocking up, you're probably looking at 8 cars.
Yeah, at least
in your street.
Yeah.
So I think it's a good thing for you to think, how do I plan this?
That's good. Car parking.
Yeah. How do I plan this? Because you don't want to bother your neighbors and people parking in front of their garage. That's a bad testimony.
Yep. Especially singing loudly in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
We're loud. I mean, where we live as well, we are blessed with a cul-de-sac with parking there, but often there is parking that's up and down the street like nobody's business, and it's off the hook. So it's crazy.
Churches are famous for disrupting the neighborhood, and that's a bad rep.
It is a bad rep. So community halls are good, and spaces are good like that. Parks are good. So, but you need a plan, like detail. How much is this actually costing me? Can we steward this based on our past? Your past is a good determiner for your future.
Yeah. Maybe teaching people to carpool. Brings down the number of cars if you're starting.
Yeah. So we plan in detail, and we keep ourselves accountable to that plan. And I think that's important for stewardship, for oversight, for accountability. You need, as a leader, you need 3 things. You need responsibility. You have to be responsible. You have to be able to hold something. Yeah. You need accountability. What did I do with what I've been given? Marsh, you said this, but you didn't do it. Why? You didn't say this and you did that. Why? And you need authority. Yeah. So you have to be able to make the decisions.
This is going to get good right now. I know that part.
I think we
talk about that.
I think we entrust pastors in certain denominations with responsibility and accountability, but they're frustrated because they've got no authority. You trust them with authority and accountability, but they actually aren't responsible for anything. You trust them with authority and responsibility with no accountability. That's dangerous. So, as a leader, I need those 3 things to show myself faithful and fruitful.
And they all come at a different stage.
Yeah.
So if you're starting, you might have all the authority, no accountability. It's very dangerous, and a lot of responsibility. Everything's in your shoulders. So what you want to do is to find good people.
Yes, straight away.
Be a guidance, be on your board, as we call it here in Australia.
Part of planning feeds into your skeleton, your structure. So, you pray, you plan. Planning will determine your budget and also your structure.
It becomes the governing agent.
Yeah. So
it's
your
not written on stones, but
it's a skeleton. Your bones grow, and your muscles grow in accordance to the strength that's required for the capacity you have. Yeah. Same with a tree. If a tree's you're trying to demand too much from the branch, it's going to break. Yeah. And so you've got to trust that level of fruitfulness based on the capacity of the plant. So stewardship.
So we talked about the before you launch anything, there's the planning. We mainly touched on the family time.
Sure.
The things that we do.
Shepherding the flock.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. So you got to plan that. You got to go visit all the people in the hospital.
Yeah.
So who's paying for parking? How much is it going to cost? New babies, flowers or gift for the mum.
When do you do it?
When? How are you going to do that? Meals for the family.
Yeah.
Sickness, the elders of the church. Who's going to coordinate the elders? Coffees with people. So who's paying for that? Have people for dinner, team for dinner, whatever. Who's paying for that? So shepherding's really costly. A youth ministry is not on Sunday. It's during the week. We feed our youth. Who's paying for that? Oh, well, families cook for our youth. and that's great. But what happens if they can't? Who's paying for pizza or whatever? Who's paying for the hall that they use? All these, the petrol in the van that they use to pick up the kids, blah, blah, blah. Who's paying the insurance of the van? It's just, you've got to go to that level of detail.
I remember, well, I'm not a big people's person, but I had in my calendar one day that I would do back-to-back just coffees.
Yeah.
Like from early in the morning, like 8 o'clock if I could. Brazil is a bit later, people than here. So 8 o'clock for them is too early. And then I'll go all the way to 7 o'clock at night, back-to-back.
Yeah.
Lunch and everything, just people. And there will be days in the beginning that, I just didn't have 8 people or 8 families to catch up in one day. It just didn't happen. Like the church had like 15 people, 20 people. So you run out. And next week, like you run out of what you say because what are you going to say? You don't click with everyone.
Yeah.
But I made sure that on the calendar, that appointment would stay there. Because once it grew a little bit more and I fell into the trap of not doing it because I had other things to do, I fell off the habit.
Right.
And then it was really hard to get back into it because I was like, now I'm busy with other things. And I enjoy preparing the sermon. I enjoy preaching. I enjoy doing this, learning that leadership, whatever. And then fell off the habit. So it took me like a good 6 months to go back. And I just couldn't do back to back because I was like, oh, it's exhausting, but slowly it went back there. So a good recommendation is put it on your calendar and stick with it.
If you're
there's no one to catch up, okay, sit down there in the coffee shop
and do it anyway.
Pray and someone will show up.
Yeah.
And then you just talk to them.
Yeah. So there is those set weekly disciplines. I procrastinate when it comes to preparation for my preaching because I spend too much time with people, but that's my passion.
And we all have seen your Saturday night changes. I'm not going to do this, going to do that. Rock up to church with the highlight. Oh, this is not going to go.
Yeah. So, but I'm like, our church isn't based on my preaching or our preaching.
Yeah.
It's based on the people and our love for the people. And so you can actually build a community outside of a platform.
Yeah.
I haven't been on the platform for 8 weeks and no one cares. So it's good. Some people will say they do, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It's, in 10 years, I would have spoken a lot.
Yeah.
And they would have forgotten everything I've said. So it doesn't matter.
People forget what you say.
Yeah.
But they'll remember how you make them feel.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I place more value on lounge rooms, coffee tables, coffee shops, dining room tables than a platform, because then I can impact them rather than impress them.
It's a weird statement because if we reinforce that statement, it feels like we're trying to say, preaching is not important.
No, it's vital.
Yeah, but I don't know how to explain, because I'm totally the opposite. I'm like, okay, let's go here. Like I don't procrastinate.
No, it's
when
vital.
It comes to my thing.
But it's vital. But see, when I get up on the platform, the people already know me because of the time I've spent with them. Generally,
yeah. So you don't have to prove anything.
So I don't have to impress them with my words. Yeah. They feel my heart.
A young, proud, unexperienced people like myself, we always try to prove ourselves to anyone. So yeah,
you're a great communicator. I've got no problem saying that. You're fantastic.
But isn't that the same? Like we grow up trying to impress everyone, and then we realize that we got to impress ourselves. And at the end of life, we ask ourselves, was it worth it?
How do you define success?
Yeah.
How do you define success? For me, I don't care about a 40-minute message. I care. I spend a lot of time in prayer and preparation, but it doesn't adjust who I am. I'm not defined by the feedback, by the size of the altar call. I'm not defined by the emails and accolades. Like that doesn't define me. I'm not attached to that. As much as I say that, it's hard. People stroke your ego. That's all good. But I'm not. That doesn't determine who I am.
I'll tell you what. And the first time that we recorded the first session, you'd said something, as you normally do, and it sticks with me. You said something that I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. And we're not going to go into that. But you said you have to decide if you're a hunter or a farmer.
Yeah.
That thing is messed up with my brains. Because I'm like...
Yeah, I'm a farmer, and the sheep know me.
Yeah,
and I know the sheep, and I love them, and so I plan to serve the sheep better as best I can with the resource God's given me. I don't presume we're going to get more. I presume, I'm steward what our past has been. A past is a stepping stone for the future. Yeah. So if you honor what's been done, you'll honor what is. And then what the outcomes of the next year, you will see. The outcomes of the next year, you'll see where you're at. And so that becomes a stepping stone for the next thing. So planning, and I'd happily share just it is simple. It just takes time and diligence and stewardship and accountability and regular. I just look at the plan. Sometimes I'm thinking, what am I doing today? I just go for my plan. Oh, that's right. Yeah. Because then you've got feed the flock. How many Bibles do you need for people? How many Bible studies are you going to do? Yeah. What are the resources for that Bible study? Notebooks, pens,
and
paper.
In the beginning, it was just purple book. And
purple book, Valiant Man. Whatever resource you're doing, you have to pay for that.
Yeah.
And you can't just wing it now. You can't just, I'll just get that, I'll just get that. That's not stewardship. That's reactionary. We need to be purposeful and intentional. And that means forethought and prayer.
Yeah. And we did, just so we can wrap up, we did family time, a little bit of feeding the flock and shepherding the flock. And the last thing we do is releasing people on purpose.
You've got to sow into beyond. You've got to sow in beyond. You have to budget and plan to sow beyond your four walls, because we're not going to change the city. We are going to change the city, the church, the many churches. So we need to keep sowing into parachurch organizations.
So context-wise, in the beginning of the year, those 2 months, March, April, we've been planning, and this little podcast is part of HAC.
Absolutely.
And it's a huge planning behind it. This is part of what we do, not all that we do.
Yeah.
And we are trying to help people planting churches. So at the moment, there's a few people investigating the idea and gathering with a few people, a few families.
Yeah.
There's huge planning going into that, because we're talking numbers. Like, when do we go there? How much do we spend? How much does it cost?
But we plan this March, April this year, where we are now. But then this is taking a chunk of my time. So am I just not worrying about what we've done? No, where we are now is led to this, to enable this to happen, because you have to plan for this to happen. So, what God's entrusted isn't being dropped or non-stewarded. Yeah. There are other great people released into, we don't recruit. We release. Yeah. We find out people's shape, what they love, what they're good at, and put them in where they're going to have their passion for fueled. And so when they're serving where they love, they can last forever. Yeah. Because it's awesome.
It's that thing that you say, like we don't balance the scales in anything. We just move
the fulcrum. Yeah,
that's it. We just move the fulcrum to wherever it's needed. So
and that's part of wisdom. I think that's a good leadership principle. Is we're too operating in the extremes. You need to move in accordance to the season of what needs focus. So, anyway.
Awesome.
That's probably just a little touch we probably should have done better, but.
Yeah, no, that's all right. We can explore that later on. But this is
do a planning part 2.
This is a good. Yeah, I think planning part 2 we can talk.
Maybe we can show what it actually looks like, maybe as well somehow.
Okay, we'll talk about that and see how we can figure that out.
Because I think people want to see like what you put down. Like it has to be right so you can see it, and what does it look like?
Yeah. So part 2, we'll show a little bit of our strategic plan, how it looks like.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah,
what does it look like to move the fulcrum when it's needed? Yeah.
Well, that's good too.
Yeah. Awesome.
Right. Thank
you guys. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one on planning part 2.